Hey everybody, Jay Widener here, back with my book I wrote with Vincent Bridges. Um, Things are starting to get good in this, so if you've stuck with me so far, you're going to get a payoff. Okay, this is chapter 6, section 4, the alchemy of light and the mystery of the cathedrals. Here we go. Lest we be accused of straying too far from Fulcanelli and our text in this interpretation of the enigmatic credence, we turn now to the master for his summation of the secret. Fulcanelli, in the Bourges chapter of Mystery of the Cathedrals, calls the credence a, quote, temple in miniature, unquote. Indeed, when we compare it to the facade of the Cathedral of Saint Trophime in Arles, we can see that both pieces of symbolic architecture are built on the same plan. Since Fulcanelli also declares that, quote, this credence itself bears the alchemical imprint, the details of which I have merely tried to describe in this work, unquote, we have another opportunity to test our tree of life hypothesis. When we superimpose the tree of life on the credence, we find that it matches perfectly. The credence is the R-E-R-E that we were talking about last time. So the three fiery pomegranates of the pediment, which Fulcanelli informs us, quote, confirm the triple action of a single procedure, unquote, are the three upper sephira, Kether, Hokmah, and Bina. The capitals of the pillar are Hesed and Geberah, and the feet are Had and Nezdak. The center niche is Tippereth, here displaced upwards and focused on the rising sun scallop shell motif above the inscription. The bottom step represents the foundation of Yesod, and the greenery below it symbolizes Malkuth. Okay, so I'll show this to you. This is that R-E-R-E. And if you look, you see we superimposed the tree of life over it. The three pomegranates at the top, and Malkuth, which is earth, represented by the plants at the very bottom. Okay, let me see where I'm at here. Okay, the three pillars of the tree are clearly delineated. The middle pillar is curiously focused on the rising sun of Tippereth, with another large inner sun, quote, fire above the abyss, as the I Ching puts it, rising above the ledge attributed to Dot. The ornamentation in this space suggests the geometry found on another Dot image given by Fulcanelli, that of the planetary metals, number 26 from Notre Dame de Paris. The facade of the Cathedral of Saint Trophime in Arles also matches the pattern. Built in the 12th century, as Notre Dame de Paris rose from the ruins of the Carolingian Cathedral, Saint Trophime's tree of life is a rich and complex with interwoven metaphors peculiar to Provence and its early Christians. I'll show you that. This is the church at Saint Trophime at Arles with, again, the tree of life imposed over the top of the architecture, so you can see. I'll hold that for a little while. I got some complaints last time I was going too fast. Okay. Over here. Saint Trophime actually has two trees collapsed into one, showing the portal grade in which the initiate passes into the Grail Castle. The facade itself contains a tree with Dot at the upper arch inside a larger tree, which displaces Dot upward and onto a columned window. Clearly, the portal is the passage through Dot, the true door of Christ, as Abbot Sugar described it. Saint Trophime is indeed a hermetic trophy of great price. However, these are not isolated musings. Most Gothic facades are based on this simple collapsed tree of life principle. The two towers of St. Denis or Notre Dame represents the two pillars of the tree, with the middle pillar beyond Tippereth displaced backward toward the central spire. This suggests that walking into the cathedral is to navigate the portal between the worlds. In Architecture of Nature, which is a book I'll discuss at some point here, We find page after page of cathedral floor plans superimposed with the tree of life to show the essential pattern. We can see this clearly if we think of stretching the facade out over the floor so that the western rose window, the Tippereth Sephiroth, is above the labyrinth on the nave of the center of the cathedral. In addition, the basic shape of the cathedral, as Fulcanelli reminds us, is that of an ankh, the Egyptian symbol of life. As Fulcanelli's most erudite readers were aware, the ankh is the only form of cross that contains all the sephira on the tree of life without rearranging the pattern. All right, so again, that's the tree of life. That's the ankh with the tree of life pattern set over the top. And then this is the floor plan of Notre Dame, which looks is in the shape of an ankh. The ankh is the tree of life. Very important. A cathedral, then, is a way to walk through the portal, the true light of Christ's door, and between the worlds. The vertical facade orients the wise to the transition, while the horizontal pattern inside evokes a response, whether one is aware of the technique or not. From above, Notre Dame looks like nothing so much as an ankh with a rose-like spire blossoming from the central Tippereth junction. This spire, of course, seen from the front, is the middle pillar from Tippereth to Kether. These are not accidental metaphors, but show a basic symbolical harmony designed by someone who knew the tree of life geometry very well. Fulcanelli informs us that this quote, that this credence itself bears the alchemical imprint, the details of which I've merely tried to describe in this work, unquote. And we have found that not only does the credence bear this alchemical imprint of the Kabbalistic tree, but so does the design of the cathedrals themselves. Once the secret is grasped, however, it makes one wonder why anyone of the intelligence of Canciole and friends would try to deny it. The authors of Architecture of Nature understood it, and Fulcanelli obviously did. At this point, any further argument seems like pure obscurantism. We must ask what the willfully blind are hiding from when an answer is as real and solid as the front of a cathedral. If they would but open their eyes and look. I want to show you the floor plan of Notre Dame with the imposed tree of life that we put over it, just to show you. And also Notre Dame Cathedral with the tree of life imposed over it. And you can see that all of the architecture is based on the tree of life. In the original edition, Fulcanelli closed his study of Hermetic symbolism, quote, by analyzing a curious and strangely rare specimen, unquote, our, quote, temple in miniature, unquote, the enigmatic credence. From this, we may assume that he intended his remarks to be a summary of the entire work. However, his approach, as usual, is somewhat oblique. After drawing our attention to the golden fleece bas relief, which, he tells us, quote, could have served as a guide, unquote, he jumps to the scallop shells on each pillar of the credence. There he identifies as symbolic of the philosophic Mercury, while connecting them with the wings and trident of Neptune. He calls our attention to the 2 dolphins and the 3 fiery pomegranates, then hits us with the inscription. With that, he leaves off describing the other details of the credence and moves on to interpreting the inscription. In that interpretation can be found the essential clues to the nature of astro-alchemy and its secret. Working backwards from Fulcanelli's comment in the Henday chapter, we had unraveled a new perspective on alchemy and its relationship with eschatology, such as Chiliasm. Could we now confirm our speculation from Fulcanelli's own guarded and symbolic words? Indeed, we could. At the very beginning of his interpretation, Fulcanelli insists on the same triple transformation that we had discovered at the heart of the alchemical process. Thanks to the simple arrangement, the RERE pattern, I can already find a clue. Oh, and this is a quote. Quote, thanks to the simple arrangement, the RERE pattern, I can already find a clue in the 3 repetitions of one and the same technique, unquote. Fulcanelli instructs us, quote, furthermore, the 3 fiery pomegranates of the pediment confirm this triple action of a single procedure, unquote. He continues, quote, in order to achieve the 3 philosophical works according to the doctrine of Gerber, unquote. The reference to Gerber, or Ibn Jabir, the Muslim scholar, introduces the idea of the 3 alchemical principles, salt, sulfur, and mercury. Fulcanelli expands this concept to cover the triple transformation of the entire ancient Gnostic science. Quote, the first operation, he tells us, leads primarily to the sulfur, a medicine of the first order, unquote. We can see this as the inner psychosexual alchemical process. Quote, the second expression, Fulcanelli states, completely similar to the first, provides the elixir or medicine of the second order, which differs from sulfur only in quality, not in nature, unquote. The second or outer transformation follows the same pattern as the inner transformation and is not different in nature. The transmutation of metals is the demonstration of this inner transformation. The quality of the transformation is projected outward onto matter by nature. Quote, only nature can overcome nature, unquote. Isis the prophetess reminds us of the transformative process. Quote, finally, the third operation, carried out like the 2 former ones, produces the philosopher's stone, the medicine of the third order, which contains all the virtues and perfections of the sulfur and the elixir, multiplied in power and extent, unquote. Fulcanelli instructs us. The third transformation is, of course, the transformation of time itself, and it is, as Fulcanelli points out, carried out like the others. Calling this transformation the philosophic stone takes us directly back to the Bahir, where the universe is described as the precious stone in the sea of wisdom. The transformation of time certainly contains the virtues and the perfections of the other 2 transformations, as Fulcanelli insists, and is definitely greater in power and extent. Fulcanelli closes the discussion by pointing to another symbol on the ceiling of the strange little room. This is the room where the RERE credence is. It is an odd room, and the ceiling has got all these squares, and each square has a different symbol engraved in it. Quote, if anyone asks, in addition, what this triple operation consists of, whose results I have shown, and how it is carried out, I refer the investigator to the bas-relief on the ceiling, which shows a pomegranate being roasted in a certain vase, unquote. While a complete analysis of this symbol is better left to another volume, we can say that the 3 italicized words are representative of the triple transformation. Quote, pomegranate describes the internal alchemy. Roasted is the action of projecting the transformation, and vase, as we shall see, is a metaphor for all 3 transformations at once. It is, in fact, nothing less than the Holy Grail itself. I wanted to show you a picture of the pomegranate being roasted on the fire. That's here. Next, Fulcanelli turns to the clues we have used above to unravel the mystery of the inscription. As we saw, his double thing or rebus of RERE matches the idea of light shining in and then light internally derived shining out again. He then describes this as, quote, a double occult property, exactly equilibrated from the nature, the light, and from the art, the light, unquote. Fulcanelli tells us that he would like to be as clear, quote, about the explanation of the second term, RER, but I am not allowed to tear down the veil of mystery concealing it, unquote. From our Sufic interpretation given above, we can see that RER has a complex meaning crystallized around the idea of the light from outside generating a response from the light within. It is the lighting of the inner lamp, the arrival of the light of the Jed, as well as the Gnostic great return of all light. Fulcanelli tells us that RER contains, quote, a vitally important secret, referring to the vase of the work, unquote. He insists that the creation of the philosopher's vase is the only way to gain, quote, the slightest success in the work, unquote. Fulcanelli is here constrained by his vow to the secret society from which he learned these important truths. And so we come face to face with the proof of the existence of those who know. Fulcanelli has such a degree of knowledge in which even the most suspicious elaborations have proven to be true that we can only wonder how much more did his superiors know when they swore him to his oath. He strains the boundaries of his oath by making his warnings. Quote, do not therefore undertake anything until you have received the light on this eggshell, which the masters of the Middle Ages called the secretum secretorium, or the secret of secrets, unquote. Quote, what then is this RER, unquote, Fulcanelli asked rhetorically. He then gives us a lesson in chemical symbology. In arsenic sulfide, he asks, which is the sulfur and which is the arsenic? The alchemical koan provokes us in us the realization required to light the inner lamp, the fusion of inner and outer symbolized by the transformation of time. Fulcanelli gives us more advice. Seek the vessel or vase first, and then allow the flow of light, and then the flow of light will be easily recognized. Pushing the boundaries of his oath, Fulcanelli goes on to tell us that according to the Sibyl, a philosopher, an alchemist, was a man who knew how to make glass. And then Fulcanelli does something no other alchemist has ever done. He describes the process in clear and simple language. Quote, therefore make your base, then your compound, seal it with care in such a way that no spirit can escape. Heat the whole according to the art until it is calcinated. Return the pure part of the power obtained to your compound, which you will seal up in the same base. Repeat for the third time and do not give me any thanks, unquote. Fulcanelli insists that he is, quote, but a beacon on the great highway of the esoteric tradition, unquote. With this outburst of clarity, Fulcanelli ends his original tour of Hermetic symbolism. He expresses his gratitude to the virtually unknown author of these works, Jean Lallemant, who, quote, following the example of the great adepts of the Middle Ages, preferred to entrust to stone rather than to vellum the undeniable evidence of an immense science of which he possessed all the secrets, unquote. Fulcanelli places Lallemant in the first rank of alchemists, along with Gerber, Roger Bacon, and Basil Valentine, and above them in his modesty and sincerity. He also tells us that Lallemant was a Knight of the Round Table, a curious title for an alchemist. And so Fulcanelli's conclusion to the first edition of Mystery of the Cathedral confirms our research on the nature and history of alchemy. However, we began our research on the basis of a remark in the Hende chapter, which was not included in the first edition. Without the clue of alchemy and Chaleism's close interconnection, Fulcanelli's big final is impossibly obscure. Much of the interest can be gleaned from his efforts, as perhaps can be seen by the architecture of nature's use of the Lallemant credence. But in the end, we are left hanging, having heard the voice of an initiate whose words remain occult. In this sense, Fulcanelli fulfilled his oath to the secret society who taught him. Between the early 1920s and the early 1950s, something happened to change Fulcanelli's view of the oath. Perhaps the order had died out or purged Fulcanelli. Perhaps he just disagreed with the secrecy, or just perhaps he was instructed to reveal the secret. At any rate, the decision was made, and Consiole was dispatched with the final clue, the cyclic cross of Hende. So you could kind of say that now we're through the part of the book where we're trying to explain everything so that you can understand the rest of the book, which is in some ways almost a science fiction novel. It gets so strange. So I know it's been a rough hoe here, but we're getting to that place where now we can start really getting into the Cross of Henday and some of the other things that point to some realities. Again, I don't agree with everything I'm about to read in these later chapters, but and I will point that out when I don't agree, because it's 20 years later, 22 years later, different person. Anyway, and there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, the tree of life symbolism is in the floor plan of cathedrals, and it's in the front facade of the cathedrals. It's the Ankh. It's also the sword and the stone. The top of the sword, the handle is the three top sephira, and the sword is the central column, and then the base is Malkuth. And we go on and on. We find that the tree of life motif is a big, huge part of ancient architecture. And the reason for that is because it's sacred. All right, that's all I got to say for this one. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe, tell your friends, and study your alchemy. It's really important. Bye, I'm Jay Widener, and goodbye. Or I'm the guy who's known as Jay Widener. Goodbye.